Nathaniel Pierce stood in the opulent expanse of his office, the walls adorned with polished mahogany and framed accolades reflecting his triumphs as a businessman. The atmosphere buzzed with laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses as he celebrated the successful conclusion of a lucrative deal. His colleagues, a mix of sharp-suited executives and eager young professionals, gathered around him, their faces flushed with excitement. "Here's to Nathaniel," one of them called out, raising a glass filled with a shimmering golden liquid. The group echoed the sentiment, their voices mingling into a harmonious chorus of praise. Nathaniel, a tall man with salt and pepper hair that spoke of both wisdom and vitality, lifted his own glass, a satisfied smile playing on his lips. "To success," he declared, his voice booming with confidence. But as the laughter swelled, a sharp tone broke through the revelry. His phone buzzed insistently on the polished surface of his desk, the screen lighting up with the name Claire. Nathaniel's heart dropped for a moment, the warmth of the celebration abruptly cooling. He answered, his jovial demeanor faltering. "Claire, what is it?" he asked, his voice laced with an unease that was foreign amidst the joviality surrounding him. "Nathaniel," she began, her voice trembling. "It's about Oliver." A chill raced down Nathaniel's spine, and the laughter around him faded into a dull roar. "What about him?" he asked, trying to maintain his composure. "There's been a diagnosis," Claire continued, her words heavy with sorrow. "He's deaf and mute." The room blurred as Nathaniel's mind raced. A deaf-mute child, his child. Panic gripped him, and he struggled to process the weight of her revelation. His colleagues, oblivious to the turmoil unfolding in their leader's mind, continued to toast and celebrate. But for Nathaniel, the glittering world of success and luxury began to crumble. "What do you mean?" he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "The doctors say he may never speak or hear. Nathaniel, He cut her off, his voice rising. "I can't deal with this right now. I have a business to run." With that, he hung up, his heart pounding in his chest. The laughter that once filled the air now felt like an echo in a hollow chamber. He turned away from his colleagues, his mind racing with thoughts that spiraled into the abyss of fear and shame. A child with a disability. What would that mean for him? For his image? Nathaniel's face hardened as he pushed through the throng of revelers, his thoughts racing. He had always prided himself on his perfect life, the image of success he had meticulously crafted. A disabled child would shatter that illusion. He could already envision the whispers, the judgment. "I need air," he muttered to no one in particular, as he strode toward the door, his mind made up, though the choice felt like a weight pressing down on his soul. The night air hit him like a shockwave as he stepped outside, the cool breeze brushing against his face, but it did little to soothe his turmoil. He climbed into his sleek black car, and the engine roared to life, drowning out the chaos in his mind. As he drove, the city lights blurred past him, a cascade of colors blending into a whirlpool of confusion. He found himself at the entrance of an orphanage, its facade unassuming yet welcoming. The stark contrast between the warmth of the building and the coldness he felt inside only deepened his despair. Nathaniel parked, his heart racing as he stared at the entrance. He took a deep breath, his mind racing with justifications for his next actions. "Oliver deserves a better life," he whispered to himself, the words a mantra that barely masked the guilt swelling within him. "I can't be the father he needs." With trembling hands, he picked up a small envelope from the passenger seat. Inside was a note he had hastily scribbled, his thoughts jumbled but resolute. As he stepped out of the car, the chill of the night seeped into his bones, but he pressed on, driven by a force he couldn't quite understand. He approached the door, glancing around to ensure no one was watching. The orphanage stood silent, a sanctuary for lost children, and in that moment Nathaniel felt like the true lost one. He placed the envelope on the doorstep, the weight of it feeling heavier than the world on his shoulders. "Goodbye, Oliver," he whispered, his voice cracking as he turned away, his heart torn between the desire for a different life and the love he could not bear to acknowledge. As he drove away, the image of the orphanage faded into the darkness, but the decision he had made lingered like a shadow, haunting him as he returned to the life he had chosen over fatherhood. Years passed, and Nathaniel immersed himself in a whirlwind of work and extravagant parties, each moment a distraction from the gnawing emptiness that threatened to consume him. His life was filled with the laughter of acquaintances and the clinking of glasses, but the joy felt hollow, a mere echo of what it should have been. Meanwhile, Oliver grew up within the walls of the orphanage, a world far removed from the lavish life his father had embraced. The other children were often cruel, their laughter ringing in his ears like a taunt, a constant reminder of his difference. He learned quickly that the world could be unkind, but he also discovered resilience within himself, a flicker of hope that would not be extinguished. Despite the bullying, Oliver found solace in technology, a realm where he could create and connect without barriers. He became fascinated by computers, spending hours tinkering with discarded parts and teaching himself to code. Sign language became his voice, a means to express himself in ways others couldn't understand. "Why do you waste your time?" a boy sneered one day, as Oliver sat hunched over a broken laptop, his fingers deftly repairing the device. "You'll never be anything." Oliver looked up, defiance blazing in his eyes. "I'll show you," he signed back, his hands moving with determination. "I'll create something that changes lives." The boy scoffed, but Oliver's resolve only strengthened. He immersed himself in his passion, staying up late at night, teaching himself new programming languages, dreaming of a future where he could help others like him communicate. As the years rolled on, Nathaniel's life continued to spiral into chaos, his empire built on ambition and ruthless deals beginning to crumble. The thrill of success had faded, replaced by the emptiness of isolation. He often found himself attending parties and events, surrounded by people, but feeling like a ghost haunting his own life. "Another successful quarter, Nathaniel," one of his associates exclaimed one evening, raising his glass in celebration. But Nathaniel merely nodded, a tight smile on his lips, his mind elsewhere. Somewhere in the back of his mind, the image of a child lingered, a child he had abandoned in search of success. As he stood in the midst of his colleagues, the laughter and clinking glasses faded into the background, and he found himself grappling with a question that wouldn't leave him. What had he truly gained, and at what cost? In the dim light of the orphanage's workshop, Oliver sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by a chaotic array of discarded electronics. The faint hum of an old fan was the only sound breaking the silence, as he meticulously pieced together components from broken computers and outdated gadgets. His fingers danced over the parts with an ease born from countless hours spent tinkering. Each circuit board, each wire, held the potential for something greater, something that could change lives like his own. "Oliver," called Miss Adams, her voice gentle yet firm. She leaned against the doorframe, her arms crossed, a slight smile playing on her lips. "What are you working on today?" "Just a new project," he signed back, his hands moving fluidly through the air. He had long since mastered the art of sign language, communicating effortlessly with Miss Adams, who had taken it upon herself to learn in order to connect with him, trying to build a program to help people communicate better, especially those who can't speak. "A communication tool?" Ms. Adams raised an eyebrow, impressed. "That sounds ambitious. Can you explain how it works?" Oliver paused, his dark eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. He gestured wildly, his passion evident. "It will use text-to-speech technology," he signed, "and simple icons for emotions. People can type or select an icon and it will speak for them. It could help kids at the orphanage who feel alone." "That's brilliant, Oliver," she exclaimed, stepping into the room. She knelt beside him, her gaze fixed on the tangled mess of wires and components. "You've really thought it through. Have you considered applying for scholarships? You could take this to the next level." Oliver's heart raced at the suggestion. The thought of leaving the orphanage and pursuing his dreams felt both exhilarating and terrifying. "I want to," he signed slowly, "but I'm not sure I'm ready. What if I fail?" Ms. Adams placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You won't know unless you try. You've already overcome so much, Oliver. This is just another step on your journey. You have a gift, and the world deserves to see it." With her encouragement echoing in his mind, Oliver began to contemplate the possibilities. As she helped him gather his tools, he felt a flicker of hope ignite within him. Maybe, just maybe, he could change not only his life, but the lives of others like him. Meanwhile, across town, Nathaniel Pierce sat in his opulent office, surrounded by the trappings of success. Yet, the glimmer of wealth had dulled significantly over the past year. The glitzy parties and high-stakes business deals that once filled his calendar had been replaced by a series of disheartening setbacks. His once flourishing empire was crumbling, and he found himself staring at the remnants of his former glory. "Mr. Pierce," his assistant Jenna entered the room cautiously, holding a stack of papers. "We need to discuss the Henderson account. They're threatening to pull out if we can't deliver by the end of the month." Nathaniel ran a hand through his hair, frustration boiling beneath the surface. "I don't have time for this," he snapped, his voice laced with irritation. "Tell them we'll have the proposal ready. Just buy us a little more time." "Of course, but—" Jenna hesitated, sensing the tension in the air. "The board is getting restless. They're losing faith in your leadership." Nathaniel's gaze hardened. "I don't need their faith. I built this company from the ground up. I don't owe anyone an explanation." With that, he dismissed her, staring out the window as the city buzzed with life below. Guilt gnawed at him, an uninvited guest that lingered in the shadows of his mind. The image of a small boy with wide, innocent eyes flooded his thoughts. His son, Oliver. He forced the memories away, unwilling to confront the pain of his past. After all, he had chosen wealth and success over the burden of parenthood, hadn't he? Days turned into weeks, and Nathaniel's situation continued to deteriorate. Legal troubles loomed on the horizon, arising from unethical business practices that had once seemed inconsequential. The whispers of scandal reached his ears, and he knew he was on borrowed time. Yet pride kept him from seeking help, from reaching out to the family he had abandoned. In the orphanage, Oliver's determination only grew stronger. With Ms. Adams' guidance, he submitted applications for scholarships, pouring his heart into personal essays that detailed his experiences and aspirations. The day he received the acceptance letter from a prestigious tech school was a turning point in his life. "Oliver," Ms. Adams burst into the workshop, breathless with excitement. "You got in, they want you at the tech school." He stared at her in disbelief, the letter clutched tightly in his hands. "Really?" he signed, his heart racing. "I can go? I can learn?" "Absolutely. This is your chance, Oliver. You deserve this," she said, her eyes shining with pride. "You'll be able to work with the best in the field. Imagine what you can accomplish." Celebration erupted around the orphanage, and for the first time in years, Oliver felt a sense of belonging and hope. The thought of leaving behind the only home he had ever known was daunting, yet he was ready to embrace the challenges ahead. As he prepared for the transition to the city, he couldn't shake the lingering questions about his father. Was he living a happy life, far removed from the burdens he had left behind? Did he even think of Oliver? Perhaps it was better to let the past remain buried. After all, he had learned to create his own family among the other children and staff at the orphanage. With a mix of excitement and trepidation, Oliver moved to the city, his new home a world apart from the orphanage. The bustling streets, towering skyscrapers, and vibrant energy ignited his passion for technology and innovation. He immersed himself in his studies, poring over coding assignments and collaborating with fellow students who shared his dreams. As he delved into his coursework, he began to develop an innovative app designed to bridge communication gaps for the disabled. The project consumed him, and he spent countless nights coding, perfecting algorithms and user interfaces. His dedication did not go unnoticed. Soon, he garnered attention from investors who saw the potential in his vision. "Oliver, have you thought about showcasing your app at the upcoming tech conference?" his mentor suggested one evening. "It could be a great opportunity to gain visibility and funding." "It's still a work in progress," he replied, biting his lip. "What if it's not good enough?" "Don't sell yourself short. You have a unique perspective and your experiences have shaped your vision. The world needs to hear your story," she encouraged, her confidence in him unwavering. With a newfound sense of purpose, Oliver began preparing for the conference. He meticulously crafted his pitch, ensuring that he could convey not only the technical aspects of his app, but also the heart behind it. He wanted to show the investors that this project was more than just a product. It was a lifeline for countless individuals who felt unheard and unseen. As the day of the conference approached, Nathaniel's world continued to spiral. The weight of his choices pressed heavily on his shoulders, and he found himself grappling with the reality of his life. The lavish parties and business deals that once defined him now felt hollow. He sat alone in his office, the walls adorned with accolades that felt like mockery in the face of his impending downfall. It was at that moment of despair that he recalled Oliver, the son he had left behind, the child who had become a stranger. Guilt washed over him like a tidal wave, and for the first time in years, Nathaniel questioned his decisions. Would reaching out be a sign of weakness, or could it be a path to redemption? As Oliver stood backstage at the tech conference, waiting for his turn to present, he felt a mix of nerves and excitement. He glanced at the sea of faces in the audience, unaware that among them sat the man who had once abandoned him. Nathaniel watched from the shadows, battling his own demons as he witnessed the son he had forsaken begin to carve out a future for himself. In that moment, both father and son were at a crossroads, each wrestling with their past and the choices that had led them to this point. The air was thick with tension, and the stage was set for a collision of fate that neither could have anticipated. Oliver stood at the edge of the bustling tech conference, his heart racing with anticipation. The hum of conversations, the clatter of footsteps, and the electric energy in the air fueled his excitement. His app, a revolutionary tool designed to help those with communication disabilities, had garnered significant attention, and today was his moment to shine. He adjusted his glasses and straightened his blazer, reminding himself of the countless hours spent coding, refining, and perfecting his creation. "Oliver!" called Miss Adams, her voice cutting through the cacophony. She hurried over, her eyes sparkling with pride. "I just heard you won the Innovation Award. You're amazing." "Thank you, Miss Adams," Oliver replied, his fingers dancing in sign language as he spoke. "I couldn't have done it without your support." She beamed at him, her expression a mixture of admiration and maternal warmth. "You deserve every bit of this recognition. Remember, this is just the beginning. You're going to change lives." "I hope so," he signed back, a hint of uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "I want to make a difference." As he prepared to pitch his idea to a panel of investors, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider. Surrounded by seasoned professionals, he felt like a small fish in an ocean of sharks. Yet he was determined to succeed, not just for himself, but for all those who felt unheard. Meanwhile, Nathaniel Pierce sat in the back of the conference hall, the weight of his own failures pressing heavily on his shoulders. The once mighty businessman had watched his empire crumble, and the lavish lifestyle he had built was now just a distant memory. He had come to this conference out of desperation, hoping to find a way to salvage his reputation and financial standing. But as he scanned the crowd, his eyes were drawn to the stage where Oliver stood, ready to present. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. The young man he had abandoned was no longer the helpless infant he had left at the orphanage. Oliver was confident, articulate, and undeniably talented. The pride swelled in Nathaniel's chest, but it was quickly followed by a wave of shame. How could he have walked away from such potential? The guilt gnawed at him as he recalled the moment he had left Oliver behind, the note clutched tightly in his hand. "Look at him," Nathaniel muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. "He's brilliant, and I threw that away." As Oliver began his presentation, the audience fell silent, captivated by his passion and vision. "Imagine a world where everyone can communicate freely, regardless of their abilities," he stated, his hands expressing the urgency of his message. "My app, CommuniTech, is designed to bridge that gap, empowering those who feel voiceless." Nathaniel leaned forward, hanging on every word. He watched as Oliver detailed the features of his app: real-time sign language translation, speech-to-text capabilities, and an intuitive interface that made communication accessible for everyone. The investors were visibly impressed, nodding and whispering among themselves. "Oliver," one of the investors called out, raising his hand, "how do you plan to scale this project?" Oliver smiled, his confidence surging. "We're currently in beta testing with several organizations dedicated to helping individuals with disabilities. Our goal is to partner with schools and community centers to enhance accessibility and foster inclusion." Nathaniel felt a mix of pride and heartache. How could he have doubted Oliver's strength? This was the son he had abandoned, the boy he had deemed a burden. Now, he was a man on the verge of changing the world. The presentation concluded with thunderous applause. Oliver's heart soared. He had done it. He had made his mark in a world that had once seemed so distant. But as he stepped off the stage, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing, a void that only the presence of family could fill. "Congratulations, Oliver," Ms. Adams exclaimed, enveloping him in a warm hug. "You were phenomenal." "Thanks, Ms. Adams," he signed, a smile breaking across his face. I think they liked it." As he basked in the afterglow of his success, Nathaniel remained in the shadows, wrestling with his own emotions. He couldn't shake the sense of regret that consumed him. Here was Oliver, standing at the precipice of greatness, and he had played no part in it. The thought tormented him. "Who would have thought?" Nathaniel whispered to himself, his gaze fixated on his son. "My son, the genius." The conference hall buzzed with excitement as people rushed to congratulate Oliver, but Nathaniel felt paralyzed, rooted to the spot. He wanted to reach out, to tell Oliver how proud he was, but the fear of rejection held him back. What if Oliver despised him? What if he didn't want anything to do with the father who had abandoned him? Driven by a sudden impulse, Nathaniel turned to leave, but the sound of Oliver's name echoed in the air, stopping him in his tracks. "Oliver, I can't believe it. You're incredible," an enthusiastic voice called out. The voice belonged to a well-known venture capitalist, and Nathaniel's heart raced as he listened to the praise being heaped upon his son. "You have a real shot at making a difference in this industry," the investor continued. "We'd love to discuss funding options and help you take this to the next level." Oliver's eyes sparkled with hope, but Nathaniel felt a sharp stab of jealousy. He had once been the one in the spotlight, the one who made deals and shook hands with powerful people. Now he was an afterthought, a ghost in his own life. "Thank you," Oliver replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "I would love to explore the possibilities." As the two men exchanged business cards, Nathaniel felt the urge to step forward, to introduce himself as Oliver's father. But the weight of his past kept him frozen. He couldn't bear the thought of Oliver's reaction, the disbelief or anger that might follow. In that moment, Nathaniel made a decision. He would not confront Oliver today. Instead, he would watch from the sidelines, a silent observer of his son's success. Perhaps in time he could find a way to reach out without overwhelming him. As the conference continued, Nathaniel retreated to a quiet corner, his heart heavy with regret and longing. He pulled out his phone, scrolling through photos of Oliver from his childhood, pictures he had never shared with anyone. Each image was a reminder of what he had lost. He closed his eyes, envisioning the boy he had left behind, now transformed into a remarkable young man. "I'm sorry, Oliver," he whispered, tears brimming in his eyes. "I wish I could take it all back." Meanwhile, Oliver stood surrounded by supporters, his heart swelling with joy and hope for the future. Yet deep down, a lingering question surfaced. What if his father had been there? What if he had known? The thought weighed heavily on him, a bittersweet reminder of the family he had never known. As the day wore on, Nathaniel slipped away, leaving the conference hall behind. He felt a mixture of despair and determination. He would find a way to reconnect with Oliver, to earn his forgiveness. The journey ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, Nathaniel felt a flicker of hope. In the midst of his own struggles, he had witnessed the brilliance of his son. And in that moment, he realized that perhaps redemption was possible, that perhaps love could conquer the mistakes of the past. With a newfound purpose, Nathaniel stepped into the future, ready to face whatever came next. Nathaniel Pierce stood at the edge of the dimly lit conference room, his heart thundering in his chest as he watched his son, Oliver, take the stage. The bright lights illuminated Oliver's face, casting a warm glow around him as he confidently approached the podium. Nathaniel's hands trembled slightly, the weight of years of regret pressing down on him. He had come to the conference with a mix of emotions: pride for his son's achievements, shame for his own past actions, and a gnawing fear of rejection. Oliver was unaware of his father's presence, focused on the sea of investors and tech enthusiasts before him. He stood tall, his posture radiating determination. The audience, buzzing with anticipation, had gathered to hear about his groundbreaking app designed to assist those with communication disabilities. Nathaniel's chest swelled with pride as he recalled the troubled boy he had left at the orphanage, now transformed into a poised young man ready to change the world. "Thank you all for being here today," Oliver began, his voice steady and clear. "I stand before you not just as a tech entrepreneur, but as someone who understands the challenges faced by millions of individuals who struggle to communicate. My app, Connect, is more than just a tool. It's a bridge to understanding." As Oliver spoke, Nathaniel felt tears prick at the corners of his eyes. The passion in his son's voice was unmistakable, and it struck a chord deep within him. He was once a man who valued wealth and status above all else, yet here stood Oliver, a living testament to resilience and the power of human connection. Nathaniel's heart ached with the knowledge that he had missed all of this, the growth, the trials, the triumphs. He wanted nothing more than to reach out, to embrace his son and tell him how proud he was, but the fear of rejection held him hostage in the shadows. The presentation continued, and Oliver painted a vivid picture of how his app could empower those who felt voiceless. "Imagine a world," he said, his eyes scanning the audience, "where everyone can express themselves freely, where communication barriers are dismantled and inclusion reigns supreme." He spoke about the features that made Connect unique, its user-friendly interface, real-time translation capabilities, and personalized learning algorithms. The room buzzed with excitement as he showcased a demo, the audience captivated by the possibilities. Nathaniel's heart raced with conflicting emotions. He felt immense pride swelling within him, but it was quickly overshadowed by a dark cloud of shame. Each word Oliver spoke seemed to cut deeper into Nathaniel's conscience, a constant reminder of the choice he had made 25 years ago. How could he have walked away from such brilliance? How could he have abandoned his own flesh and blood? As the presentation ended, the applause erupted like a wave crashing onto the shore. Nathaniel watched as Oliver beamed, his smile infectious. Investors rushed to congratulate him, eager to discuss funding and partnerships. In that moment, Nathaniel felt an overwhelming urge to step forward, to reveal himself as the man who had given life to this remarkable individual. He could almost taste the bitter tang of regret on his tongue, but he hesitated, frozen in place. What if Oliver didn't want to see him? What if he had built a life so rich and fulfilling that Nathaniel was nothing more than a distant memory, a ghost of a father who had failed him? As the crowd began to disperse, Nathaniel slipped out of the room, his heart heavy with the weight of his choices. He wandered the halls of the conference center, lost in thought. Each step echoed his internal struggle. Should he attempt to reach out, or was it too late? He found himself in a small, dimly lit bar just off the conference floor, the atmosphere a stark contrast to the excitement outside. He ordered a drink, his hands shaking as he tried to calm the storm within. With each sip, Nathaniel's mind raced. He gazed into the glass, seeing not just his reflection but the man he had become, an empty shell haunted by the ghost of his past decisions. He thought about the life he had built, the wealth and status that had come at such a high cost. The laughter and joy he had chased felt hollow now, without the warmth of family. As he stared into his drink, a slip of paper caught his eye on the counter. It was a letter, crumpled and worn, as if it had been hastily shoved into his pocket. He unfolded it, his heart pounding as he read the words scrawled in a hurried hand. "Dear Mr. Pierce, we regret to inform you that your company has officially declared bankruptcy. We understand that this is a challenging time, and we advise you to seek immediate legal counsel regarding your assets. Sincerely, the Board of Directors." Nathaniel's heart sank. The news was like a dagger to his chest, confirming his worst fears. He had lost everything he had worked for, his empire crumbling beneath him. A bitter laugh escaped his lips, a sound devoid of humor. What did it matter now? He had sacrificed his son for this, for a life that had ultimately brought him nothing but loneliness and despair? As he mulled over his misfortunes, the bartender approached, breaking his train of thought. "You okay, man?" the bartender asked, his voice laced with concern. Just reflecting on some poor choices, Nathaniel replied, forcing a weak smile. Yeah, we all have those days. Just remember, it's never too late to turn things around, the bartender offered, pouring him another drink. Too late for me, Nathaniel muttered, staring into the depths of his glass. But as he sat there, drowning in his thoughts, another letter slipped through the door, this one more elegantly penned. It bore the logo of a prestigious law firm. His heart raced as he opened it, scanning the contents quickly. Dear Mr. Pierce, we are writing to inform you of an unexpected development regarding your son, Oliver Pierce. Due to recent successes in his ventures, you may be entitled to a share of his fortune. This letter serves as a formal notification that you may want to consider reaching out to him regarding this inheritance. Best regards, G. Thompson, Esquimanda. Nathaniel's breath caught in his throat. Inheritance. His son had made a name for himself, and now there was a chance, albeit a slim one, that he could reconnect with Oliver. Hope intertwined with his despair, igniting a flicker of determination within him. But how could he face Oliver after everything? What would he even say? Nathaniel wrestled with the thought, his mind racing. He had spent years hiding from the consequences of his actions, building walls around his heart to protect himself from the pain of his past. Yet here was a chance, an opportunity to reach out and perhaps seek forgiveness. As he sat in that dim bar, the weight of the letter in his hand, Nathaniel knew he was at a crossroads. Would he continue to cower in the shadows of his guilt, or would he take a step into the light, risking everything to confront the son he had abandoned? The thought of reaching out filled him with both excitement and terror, a dangerous cocktail of hope and uncertainty. With a deep breath, Nathaniel resolved to take that step. He would find Oliver. He would learn about the man his son had become, and perhaps, just perhaps, he could begin to mend the fractures of their broken past. As he left the bar, the dim light of the street lamps illuminated his path, a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped him for so long. Nathaniel's heart raced with a mix of anticipation and fear, but this time he was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Oliver sat at his new office, a sleek, glass-walled space filled with the hum of creativity and innovation. The funding he had secured for his app had turned his dreams into reality, and now a small but dedicated team of developers, designers, and marketers buzzed around him, each person working tirelessly to help his vision come to life. Yet, despite the whirlwind of activity and the palpable excitement in the air, a lingering emptiness gnawed at him. "Hey, Oliver," called out Mia, one of his lead developers, as she poked her head through the doorway. "You're not going to believe the feedback we just got from the beta testers. They love the app. It's going to change lives." Oliver smiled, forcing the joy he should have felt. "That's great news, Mia. Let's set up a meeting to go over the details. I want to make sure we're ready for the launch." As Mia disappeared back into the sea of motion, Oliver's thoughts drifted. He had achieved so much in such a short time, yet the shadow of his father loomed over him. Nathaniel Pierce. The name was a bitter reminder of abandonment. Even with all his accomplishments, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling of loss. He often wondered what it would have been like to have a father who believed in him, who could have shared in his successes. "Hey, Oliver," said another team member, James, as he approached with a tablet in hand. "You have a minute? There's something I'd like to show you regarding the app's user interface." "Of course," Oliver replied, trying to focus on the present. But as he leaned over the tablet, his mind wandered again. What was Nathaniel doing now? Did he even know that his son had made something of himself? A part of him felt a strange pull towards his father, an urge to understand why he had made the choices he did. Was Nathaniel still the man he had been, consumed by his own ambitions? Or had life humbled him in ways Oliver couldn't imagine? Meanwhile, Nathaniel sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing a drink that had long since gone warm. The once magnificent businessman was now a man lost in regret, a shadow of his former self. He stared into his glass, reflecting on the choices he had made. The sheer weight of guilt bore down on him, heavy and unyielding. "Hey, Nate," said Greg, an old colleague who had dropped by to check on him. "You look like you've seen better days. What's going on?" "Just thinking," Nathaniel replied, his voice low. "About family, about mistakes." Greg raised an eyebrow, intrigued. Family? You mean Oliver? You haven't seen him in years. I know. Nathaniel sighed, running a hand through his hair. But I've been hearing things. He's doing well for himself. Really well. I've read articles about his app. It's impressive. Well, you've always been one to appreciate talent, Greg said, a smirk creeping onto his face. Maybe it's time to reach out. You can't keep running from your past forever. Nathaniel scoffed, shaking his head. What am I supposed to say? Hey son, I abandoned you, but look at how successful you are now. It doesn't exactly scream Father of the Year. Maybe you could just be honest, Greg suggested. People make mistakes. It's what you do next that counts. Nathaniel considered this. Could he really take that step? What if Oliver rejected him? What if he felt nothing but anger toward the man who had left him behind? But the thought of staying in the shadows, watching his son's success from afar, was unbearable. As the night wore on, Nathaniel made a decision. He pulled out his phone and began scrolling through social media, searching for Oliver's profile. There it was, a vibrant page filled with updates about the app, photos of smiling faces, and testimonials from users whose lives had been changed. His heart raced as he clicked on the message button. Dear Oliver, he typed, hesitating as he considered his words. I've been following your journey and I just wanted to say, I'm proud of you. I know my absence has hurt you, and for that, I am deeply sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. With a deep breath, he hit send, his heart pounding in his chest. It was a small gesture, a flicker of hope in the darkness that surrounded him. Perhaps it was time to face the consequences of his past, to seek redemption, no matter how small. Meanwhile, Oliver's phone buzzed on the table, the sound breaking through the haze of his thoughts. He glanced down, and his heart skipped a beat at the sight of a new message from an unknown number. Curiosity piqued, he opened it. Dear Oliver, I've been following your journey, and I just wanted to say I'm proud of you. I know my absence has hurt you, and for that, I am deeply sorry. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. His breath caught in his throat. Who was this? A sense of warmth spread through him, mixing with confusion. Who would reach out like this? He felt a strange connection, a yearning to know more. A part of him wanted to respond immediately, to dig deeper into this unexpected support, but another part held him back. Could it be a cruel joke? A random stranger looking to exploit his emotions? Oliver? Mia's voice broke through his thoughts again. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Yeah, just a message from someone, he replied, his mind still racing. Nothing important. Right, she said, eyeing him skeptically. You sure? Because if you need to talk... I'm fine, he insisted, forcing a smile. Let's focus on the launch. As the team gathered around for their meeting, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that this anonymous message was a turning point. Perhaps it was a sign, a nudge from the universe that he was meant to uncover the truth about his past and the father who had left him behind. With each passing moment, he felt an overwhelming urge to understand the man who had shaped his life even from a distance. What if there was more to Nathaniel's story than he had ever known? What if he wasn't just a coward, but a man who had made choices he regretted deeply? As he looked into the faces of his team, their excitement infectious, Oliver resolved to find answers. Whether through the anonymous message or a more direct approach, he would uncover the truth. The past might be painful, but it was also part of who he was. And perhaps, just perhaps, there was a path forward that could lead to healing and understanding for both him and his estranged father. The day of the app launch arrived, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement and anticipation. The venue was packed, filled with tech enthusiasts, investors, friends, and family, all eager to witness the culmination of Oliver's hard work and dedication. Bright lights illuminated the stage, where a sleek podium stood prominently, adorned with the logo of his groundbreaking app, Bridge. Oliver paced nervously backstage, his heart racing with a mix of excitement and anxiety. He could hear the chatter of the crowd outside, their murmurs rising in a crescendo as the event drew closer to its start. Are you ready? Ms. Adams, his mentor, asked, as she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. Her eyes sparkled with pride, reflecting the countless hours they had spent perfecting his pitch. "You've worked so hard for this moment." Oliver nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. I want to make a difference. I want people to understand that communication is a bridge, not a barrier." His fingers brushed against the edges of his notes, a comforting gesture that grounded him. As he stepped out onto the stage, the bright lights temporarily blinded him, but he could hear the applause erupting from the audience. He took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders and focusing on the faces in the crowd. Among them, he noticed a figure standing slightly apart, a man with an air of desperation and uncertainty. Nathaniel Pierce, watching from the shadows, felt his heart race as he absorbed the sight of his son, now a man, radiating confidence and passion. Oliver began his speech, his voice steady as he introduced his vision for the app. "Bridge is not just about technology, it's about connecting people regardless of their challenges," he proclaimed, his hands gesturing animatedly as he spoke. "We live in a world where communication should be universal, and I believe we can achieve that together." The audience listened intently, captivated by his passion. Nathaniel's heart swelled with pride as he witnessed the culmination of talents he never knew Oliver possessed. Yet a pang of regret washed over him. He had missed all those years, moments that could have forged a bond between them. Suddenly, as Oliver delved deeper into his presentation, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He discreetly glanced down, his heart stopping when he saw the text from an unknown number. "I'm here. I'm watching you." Confusion and a whirlwind of emotions flooded his mind. Who could it be? His father? He hesitated, momentarily losing track of his words, his breath catching in his throat. The weight of abandonment pressed against him, intertwining with curiosity about the identity of the sender. "Oliver?" Ms. Adams whispered from the sidelines, concern etched on her face. "Are you okay?" With a shaky breath, he nodded, but his mind was racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that the text was linked to the man he had just spotted. Nathaniel felt his pulse quicken, knowing he was on the precipice of a decision that could alter everything. Should he reveal himself now, during this pivotal moment, or wait until after the presentation? As if sensing Nathaniel's internal struggle, Oliver took a deep breath and continued, pouring his heart into the pitch. "Every person deserves a voice, and I want Bridge to empower those who have felt silenced. Together, we can build a community that understands and embraces diversity." Just as he finished, Oliver's gaze drifted back to the audience, landing on the figure of Nathaniel. In that moment, time seemed to freeze. Nathaniel's heart raced, and he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. He had come so close to finding redemption, yet fear held him back. Just then, a woman stepped forward from the back of the crowd, her presence commanding attention. She was graceful, with long, dark hair that framed her face and a look of fierce determination in her eyes. "Oliver," she called, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. The audience turned, murmuring in confusion. Oliver's heart raced anew, his curiosity piqued. "Who are you?" he asked, stepping away from the podium, his mind reeling. The woman took a deep breath, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "I'm your mother," she said, her voice steady despite the emotional weight of her revelation. The crowd gasped, and Oliver's world tilted on its axis. "Mum," Oliver whispered, the word tasting foreign yet familiar on his tongue. Memories he never had flooded his mind, stories he had heard, fragments of a life he longed for but had never known. Nathaniel, caught in the whirlwind of emotions, stepped closer, his heart pounding in his chest. "Is it true?" he murmured, his voice barely audible as he sought her gaze. "You never came back. I thought you abandoned us." "I never stopped loving you," she replied, her voice breaking slightly. "I was too wounded to return. After I found out about Oliver's diagnosis, I couldn't bear the thought of being a burden. I thought you would be better off without me." The revelation hung heavy in the air, and Nathaniel felt the walls he had built around his heart begin to crack. "But I was wrong," he admitted, his voice trembling. "I thought he would be a burden, and I left. I left you both." Oliver stood between them, torn between the two people who had shaped his existence, yet had also been absent from it. "Why now?" he asked, his voice a mixture of anger and longing. "Why after all this time?" "I've spent years trying to find you, Oliver," she said, stepping forward, her eyes pleading. "I've watched you grow from a distance, and I've never stopped believing in you. When I heard about your app, I knew I had to come. I wanted you to know that I'm here, and I'm proud of you." Tears streamed down Oliver's cheeks as he processed the whirlwind of emotions. "You could have reached out, you could have tried," he said, his voice cracking with a mix of pain and hope. Nathaniel stood frozen, witnessing the emotional confrontation before him. He yearned to step forward, to embrace his son, to share his own remorse and longing for forgiveness, but he hesitated, still caught in his web of guilt. "Oliver," Nathaniel finally said, his voice hoarse. Stop," Oliver interrupted, raising a hand. "I need time, both of you." His heart ached, a tempest of emotions swirling within him, anger, sadness, confusion, and an unexpected glimmer of hope. The crowd buzzed with whispers, spectators captivated by the unexpected family drama unfolding before them. Nathaniel felt exposed, raw, as he realized the depth of his mistakes. He had been so focused on his own desires and fears that he had lost sight of what truly mattered, his family. As Oliver stepped back, he made a decision. "I need to think. I need to understand who I am, who you both are to me." He turned away from them, his heart heavy with the weight of the past, but also filled with a flicker of possibility for the future. Nathaniel watched his son retreat, feeling the chasm of years lost between them. "Oliver!" he called, desperation creeping into his voice, but Oliver didn't turn back. As the crowd erupted into murmurs, Nathaniel realized that redemption would not come easily. It would require patience, understanding, and the courage to confront the pain of their shared history. The launch event continued around them, but for Nathaniel and his estranged family, time stood still. In that moment, they were not just a father, a mother, and a son. They were three souls navigating the complex terrain of love, loss, and the hope of reconciliation. The journey ahead would be fraught with challenges, but perhaps, just perhaps, they could find a way to bridge the gap that had kept them apart for so long.